It is time.
Shark's in order. Our shark.
There's a Sharknado coming.
Dragon sharks?
Are those sharks with laser beams attached to their heads?
Welcome to the Real Sharks.
Episode 9 of the Real Sharks podcast. We got some interesting movie news for you here today. And of course, our main subject today is the man who almost took down Disney, Don Bluth himself, and Don Bluth Films on the Real Sharks podcast. And I got some shout-outs today for GOC's movies, The Film Bubble, Ordinary, 5-Minute Movie Guy, Mandy Mortem, Billy Day, Wes Hightower, Right Chris, hey, what up, buddy? We got Rosa's Reviews, Jesse POV, BJ the Web Guy, Anka Maria Churita, The Tangent Lounge, Super Media Bros Podcast, and Leo the Ben Tickler. Hey guys, thanks for being awesome. Alright everyone, let's get started today with some movie news.
Some good news that's just come out recently.
Good news, everyone.
Danny Boyle has agreed to work on a third film to 28 Days Later.
See, now that's news I like to hear, but what's actually going to be the title of the film though?
It's still speculation, but a lot are leaning towards it's going to be 28 months later.
I hope not.
I mean,
it's so cliche.
It's cliche.
It's like all these rising films.
It's how it goes with. I mean, they can't call it 28 years later.
I know, but God, they could just call it something else, like The Infected.
I mean,
that would be a better title.
Yes.
Or, Quarantine. Well, there was a movie already called Quarantine.
Yeah.
But, God. Yeah, as long as Danny Boyle's doing it, though, it'll be interesting. I don't know, though. He's kind of had this almost hiatus for a little bit here. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I hope it's good. I bet it's going to be good. It'll be visually good.
Spectacular.
Because the way he directs movies is usually based off the music and a lot of visual... no, more visually metaphoric. There's a lot of like symbolism and like some of the images he has. Like for instance, in 28 Days Later, when they're in the taxi and they're traveling, the flowers. You notice how the flowers are more like illuminated with the lens of the camera to look more like a painting. That was deliberately by Danny Boyle to show that basically these wild flower fields are not flowers, but these flower fields are growing wild, basically. With nobody to like tame them or anything, so it's just all like bloomed out and crazy. So that's kind of like what he does. And same thing with the horses. When they were looking at the black and white horses, and he's like, no, they're just fine. That was another visual thing he does. That's just how Danny Boyle is. When the girl Hannah is, I think it's Hannah.
Yeah, Hannah.
When Hannah's running through the mansion, she's in the red dress. He wanted that to represent kind of a Alice in Wonderland type feel to it. So it's going to be interesting. I like Danny Boyle a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's actually teaming up with the original writer too, Alex Garland, and he just actually came off of Annihilation.
Yeah, I've heard mixed things about that movie.
He actually directed that.
Yeah, I've heard mixed things about it. I personally haven't seen it myself, so I can't really say too much. That's it. It'll be interesting. Danny Boyle's had some great movies like Trainspotting.
Oh yes,
awesome movie. That movie actually has Kevin McKidd in it. Yeah, he's actually in that movie. It's funny.
Johnny Lee Miller, Ewan McGregor.
Yeah, Ian McGregor's in that movie. He did The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio. Love that movie. It's probably a film I like that people hate because a lot of people hate that film, and I understand why. It is a weird, out there kind of movie, but it's visually stunning. I actually like Leonardo DiCaprio's performance in it. I get where it was going in the film. It is an odd film. And then he did course, Slumdog Millionaire, which got him Best Director. I don't care what people say. Slumdog Millionaire is a really, really, really good film. I liked it. For those people who don't like it, it's the version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but the India version of it. But, his answers all correlate with his life, so people think he's cheating, but actually he really does know the answer in some form or some way. Yeah. 20 Days Later we've spoke about it before. It's just a good movie.
Yep,
So I'm actually looking forward to Danny Boyle doing another one. I just wish it was titled different.
I mean, I'm excited, both director and original writer for this. I mean, it's going to be spectacular. It's going to be better than the second one.
You.
I honestly think this is going to beat out the second one.
I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. I don't know because, Danny Boyle's just done a lot of good movies, but, Sunshine, too, was good, but I don't know. I just don't know about going off 28 weeks later. I just don't know if that's a good move, but that's just my opinion. I just think people are going to just kind of compare it off 28 weeks later instead of 28 days. I don't know. That's just me.
I just think they're going to kind of critique it off of the first one and not the second, because
we'll see.
That's how it's going to be. Other news that I brought with me today is Chris Rock. Chris Rock is getting behind the director's chair once again, but not a comedy or kind of an action movie. This time he's dipping his hand into horror, and he is going to be doing a Saw movie. He is going right into horror, people. I mean,
that can't be real.
Sadly, it's true. They're going to start shooting pretty soon.
Yeah.
And,
wow, it is true. That's insane.
It is. I mean, he's been a big fan of the series, and he
don't know why. I think Saw is once you see the first one, then that's it.
Yeah, the first one's the most you can bear through.
No, the first one is just the only legitly good movie. I mean, it's the only one that has the real surprise. I think everything else is irrelevant in it. This whole I really just don't understand people that are like, oh, I love the whole Saw series. It's the same thing for almost 6 movies. It's literally with a little story sprinkled in. The only good story was them trying to find out who was behind it the whole time, and it was the guy in the room. It's like, spoilers, hey, that was the best ending of all of them. The rest of them I thought were just almost a gore tournament, basically, to see how you could kill people, make it more gory on screen to gross people out. I mean, I'm a big horror fan, but when it comes to the Saw movies, I actually really don't like those films, because I think Saw...
So much gore.
No, well, yes and no, because Saw... There's one thing to do gore right, and then there's one thing to do gore wrong. And by that, I know it sounds funny, but, for example, Cannibal Holocaust did gore right. Now, gore in those weird, necessary ways made the movie almost come off too real. And there's a lot of other films, like Hostel has done that too.
Yeah.
Jaws even too. They kept the gore to a minimum until it actually came to the shark actually biting through the leg of a guy. So when gore is used good, it is actually more scary and it drives the horror more. But Saw, it was just oh my god, how more grossed out could I be? And then that really led to movies like, Human Centipede, which I actually personally love. I actually like Human Centipede. But it just started leading to all these movies that was just a race to be more gory. Automation Transfusion as a zombie film. That was a low-budget zombie film that not only incorporated Zack Snyder's vision of zombies running, but also incorporated a lot of gore into it. I mean, more gore than you used to see in the 70s Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that. I hope it's different. I'm not a big fan of Saw, so I don't really care to see a reboot of it. I didn't think the other films were good either, so it's kind of are you guys out of ideas?
Teaming up with longtime producers of Saw, Mark Berger and Oren Klaus.
Oh, God.
And it's more of a reimagining of everything, trying to see if they can put a different twist on it. That's how I'm getting from what I've read so far. I mean,
no, sir, I didn't like it.
The first one, I agree with you. The first one's good. The third one, after I saw the third one,
I was done with the first one. I was done with the first one. I actually sat through, I think, 4 in theaters, and I was like, my God, this is so dumb.
I mean,
it's just a guy basically trapping people in a house just to see how gory it can be. I mean, God,
Yeah.
How much? I never understood how much can people really want to watch this. God, go see other horror movies.
I mean, they're way better horror movies than just Saw.
Yeah, but yeah, I can't stand Saw. I don't really like that franchise at all. I think it's so shallow. And for all those Saw fans out there, I'm sorry, but it's a shallow franchise. It's a stupid movie. They're stupid movies. It's times like these I wish musicals don't fail. Yeah.
But, you know, I think
I just feel like Hollywood is running out of ideas. From Disney to just Warner Bros. Everybody's doing this reboot and remake. They're even thinking about doing a Matrix reboot.
I heard that, and they shouldn't.
No, they shouldn't. They should leave the Matrix alone. I don't know why. I think they're just getting behind too many fan
theories and fan wishes.
theories and fan wishes and wanting people wanting them. Oh, what happened with Neo in the end? It's like, God, guys, get it. Come on now, just get it. It's simple. He wasn't the one. Get it. I really hope they don't do another one. I think The Matrix is just a great standalone. And this is also, too, what I also think is happening, and I think it's awful, is the death of the trilogy is happening right before our eyes. Every movie is being turned into a franchise. From, at first it was like Alien. Alien was originally, like an anthology. There was ended at Resurrection. Then they made AVP. And now they're just making more. And now it's part of a bigger universe. And then you had, Lord of the Rings. Yeah. You have 3 movies. And then they had to go and make The Hobbit. And as short of a book as that was, they had, for just some reason, try to split it into 3 movies, which ended up being terrible.
It was.
Star Wars is gone. It is basically a franchise now. The Marvel franchise, DC franchise now. I mean,
Toy Story.
Toy Story
is now a franchise.
Toy Story is now a franchise. Yeah, I mean, everything is now a franchise. John Wick is becoming a franchise. Yeah. I mean, everything is becoming a franchise. It's kind of sad. It's the death of trilogies and the death of one good movie and one sequel. It just seems like now theaters want to just pump out as many of the same rehashed idea with a little bit of a difference to get your money and put your ass in the seat. That's all they're really trying to do. And that's just how it is. Doesn't help too with some film critics and some podcasts that sit there and just exacerbate the problem by saying that bad films are good too to make you go see them.
I mean, I can't disagree with you there. I mean, our trilogies are coming to an end. I mean, a lot of people were thinking Toy Story 3 was the last, and they came out with this one. And honestly, I feel
every DC hero is getting a franchise film too. They're going to make the sequel to Aquaman. They're already making the sequel to Wonder Woman.
1984.
They just want to continue on and make sequels and make them franchises. It just seems like there's no more. One movie, sequel, done. Or the trilogy, the classic trilogy is gone. I'll never forget when Randall in Clerks 2 says, there's only one trilogy, and it's not of the King, it's of the Jedi, and that has totally not stood well with time.
No. I mean, it's perfect for how he said it, too. I mean,
Hunger Games franchise. Gosh. They're already making another movie.
Yeah, a prequel.
What's those one movies? The one with the girl, and they have to find their Divergent. Yes, there you go. You knew what I was going for.
3.
Yeah, because it was terrible. It was so terrible. They were going to turn that into a franchise, though.
Well, it was supposed to end with 4, and then there was talks about a TV
Transformers franchise.
Yeah, franchise.
That's what I'm saying, man. Everything's a franchise now. And everything's becoming awful.
Well, I mean, how I see it is, and I think anybody could agree with me, as soon as you have a first movie that's off of anything or just from original idea, becomes box office gold. It says, okay, let's try and see if we can make a sequel off of it.
Yeah, but how many sequels is too many sequels? I mean, what is the cost of putting asses in the seats and destroying a good story at the same time?
I mean, that's a good question.
I mean, what is it worth? I mean, take The Hobbit, for example. The Hobbit is a good prime example of trying to get as many asses in the seats and trying to put so much effort in it to make it as much like Lord of the Rings as possible, even though it didn't need to be.
Nope.
And it just came off as awful. Either way, it came off as bad. I mean, you see studios do this all the time.
Well, and one comes to mind too is Fast and the Furious. They're actually going to start filming pretty soon, and Fast 9.
It's Point Break with cars.
Yes,
it's just Point Break with cars. And I don't see how many times you can take this from Tokyo back to America and everything. I mean, my God.
They've gone to Dubai. They've gone to...
oh, God. Screw those movies.
Well, I mean, they've already made or kind of pushed off that series, and they have a Luke and Hobbs movie coming out pretty soon.
God.
I mean, Dwayne Johnson, I mean, he's just pumping out movies as quick as he can.
Yeah, that's because, we spoke about this. Dwayne Johnson, it's impossible for him to do a bad movie because people forget he's done some bad movies, but it's because he's Dwayne Johnson. Everybody loves him. That's why. And we're going to be right back with our first commercial break. And welcome back, all my listeners. You're listening to the Real Shark Podcast, and Steve is now joining us in the Real Shark studio.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
All right, we are doing fine. I believe everyone's doing fine.
Good.
We're fine.
We're all hunky-dory.
I actually wanted to get your guys' opinion on this here, and I was actually thinking about it before we actually move on to our main subject, which is going to be Don Bluth films. It just kind of got me thinking. One of his movies that came out during the time was, I believe it was All Dogs Go to Heaven, and at the time, not only was it out, it was against movies such as Jim Henson's movies and Disney's. And it just made me think, man, what a time has passed when we used to have Jim Henson, Disney, Don Bluth, all competing for the box office at one time. I mean, what
animation supremacy, pretty much.
Yeah, what a time! What a time that's gone by.
You don't have any more of that, right? Are there anybody that's
no? Because Disney has actually bought up, everybody. They own Jim Henson now. They own the Muppets, and they pretty much stomped Don Bluth out.
Yeah, Pixar too. They own Pixar.
Yeah, but I'm talking about old generic animation. I mean, this is way before the age of computer animation. This is like hand-drawn animation, So it just, makes me always think about, like, God, that was always a time. And now, you always hear about this idea in our society about how monopolies are bad. Well, we have one right now, with Disney basically owning everything. And it's just, I don't know, it just seems like going to the movies now has become so... not only less competitive, but almost shallow in a way, because you're just going to go see one company pumping out the same thing, over and over again just to make money. It's all coming from the same source, the same ideas, the same, Disney Council. So it's almost like you never get to see any original ideas, from like Don Bluth and Jim Henson. It's quite sad, because there'll never be anybody like those two, Right. Don Bluth still being alive, at the time here,
Yeah, but I agree with you. I mean, if people are going to bring up companies like Sony's Illumination, I believe, that made the Minion movies. What else did they make? Did they make the Secret Lives of Pets? I believe those type of movies, but they're not. You wouldn't put them in the same categories as like a Moana, right? Or any of the newer films that came out for Disney, like a Frozen. It doesn't even touch the surface of that. So, with Don Bluth coming out around what he was doing, or especially his like massive powerhouse of 80s animation, it was right neck and neck with a lot of the classics that we know and love, like Aladdin, the Lion King especially. They were actually not just classics right out of the gate. They were competing hard.
But I'm getting more on the sense of like, the ramifications of how there is no other competing studios anymore. I mean, you got in the animation sense, I guess you can make that argument.
But they're not really competition.
It's not really competition, because even some animation, as I guess you could say, some drawing companies were so shallow in, their creations just to make a quick buck, like the direct-to-DVD Disney's, yeah. But, I don't know, I just always find it kind of sad. I think we live in kind of it's an interesting time, yet a sad one when we see a lot of old school things like that have gone away, such as, Jim Henson's company, being their own entities, such as Jim Henson and... Don Bluth and Disney. And Disney almost being second par, almost trying to, its hardest to compete with those kind of companies, brought out the best in Disney,
Yeah. Can you even compete with Disney at this point?
Not even a little bit anymore. I mean, Disney has just made like such lucrative deals to these guys that just force them to say, yeah, okay, we'll sell you everything and everything that goes with our company and what it stands for, basically. I mean, with Jim Henson, I honestly I wish they did not line themselves with Disney. I mean, Jim Henson company pumped out such great movies.
Yeah, well, they own the Muppets. They don't. So the rights they have from Jim Henson is the Muppets.
Well, it's because Jim Henson's gone.
Yeah.
You know, there was no other place for the Jim Henson Company to go, and they couldn't survive on their own, so they had to sell themselves to Disney. It's sad. It's sad. It really is. I think it's we live in a quite it's just interesting. You know, I don't know. It just kind of caught my attention today, really watching about like, wow, you know, that age is really gone when it used to be like, wow, Mom, Dad, what do we see? Do we see, you know, The Great Mouse Detective? Do we see Father Goes West? Or do we see the new Jim Henson movie? It's just, you know.
It's true. And a lot of, I'll add on this point, with this whole competition that happened at that time, bringing up like movies like Aladdin and everything that were very fun-loving, family-friendly movies, but you had movies like Secret of the Nymph that was not. They had a lot of realism in it and death and a lot of things that challenged kids' imagination at the time. That you kind of like, again, going on your point, Rob, doesn't really happen now, even with competition or no. There's some movies that try to do it, even Disney tries to do it, but you know, competition brings out the best out of both parties. And when you're on top, you know, who's going to challenge you?
Even think about this, like, when you do see an animation nowadays, do you just assume it's Disney? You generally do. A lot of people assume it's a Disney film if it's some kind of anime. Before you get the title. Oh, this is the new Disney Pixar, you know, even when it's, you know, like DreamWorks or something. The reason I'm saying that is because that's how much Disney has conquered in the terms of animation. Is even like, I know people that think like some Don Bluth movies are Disney films, like Father Goes West and everything like that. Or I mean, like, you know, well, not only Father Goes West, but American Tail as well.
Or I've heard Anastasia as well.
Yeah, people think that. All right, guys. So I actually want to do a review for the show today. I want to talk about AMC's The Terror. That's right. Now, this is actually based on a true story about the Franklin expedition done by the British Navy back in 1848 that went missing. And it's a really, really good story. So, spoilers at the end, everybody. So The Terror is basically, like I said, it's about this journey to find the Northwest Passage in the Arctic. They have the most advanced ships at the time in this era. Basically, these two warships they have, which is, one of them is called the Terror, and the other one's called the Erebus, which is basically the entrance to hell. Which, you know, basically everyone, even at the time, made the joke of like, wow, that's crazy that these guys are going to this unknown part of the world. And it stars Jared Harris, Tobias Menzies, Paul Reddy, Adam Nagatis, Ian Hart, Neve Nilsson, and let me tell you, I mean, all of them are really, really good in it, and it's such a good show. I mean, the reason it's called The Terror is actually, I'm going to get to that in a second. So the whole premise is they're trying to find the Northwest Passage in the Arctic. And the last time they're seen by a whaling ship heading into the entrance. So as they get there, they get stuck. They not only get stuck, they get stuck for a whole year in the ice. And so as they... basically, no one had heard from them. So basically, the only way that this whole story was ever uncovered was when the British actually went 3 years later to find out what happened. And what they found is that some of the men had camped out on a nearby island, and 3 of them had died. And that was one thing that was just the beginning. So they found out 3 of the men had died. So the expedition actually continued on. And then they actually took a even harder route because they didn't know where they were going. They didn't know if the Northwest Passage existed. There was a basically they knew this part of this continent. They didn't know if it was King William Island or King William Continent. They didn't know if it was a continent or if it was an island. So they tried basically in a rush of time to get through there, and they got stuck again. But they got stuck for 2 more years.
What?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
And basically, this whole story is a story of survival. I mean, everything you can imagine. And I'll get to why it's called The Terror, and I really wish it wasn't. But the whole movie is really good, historically accurate. Well, pretty historically accurate for what it is. I mean, it's really, really, really spot on to the time period. It's a really good Victorian British period piece. Anyway, so the whole series is it's very short. It's mildly short. And the reason it's such an interesting series is I'm gonna actually leave it there on the review. So they get stuck and they can't get out. So I don't want to leave. I want everyone to go see it after that. So here comes the spoiler. So you might want to turn it off now. So here's the spoilers. Basically, what happened in the expedition in the end is they all died. They found all their they don't know what happened to them to this day. It actually took like almost 150 years later for modern day scientists to piece together what happened. Basically, they after they found the graves, they went along to the other part of the island. They found this mound. It was like a grave mound, and what they found was a tube and a note in it, and it said, "All is well. The ships have been stuck in the ice for that winter, and all was well. The men were well." And basically scribbled on the side, it said that Franklin was still, that's the guy who was leading the expedition, he was alive and well, men were okay. And then when they actually looked on the side, there was another note that scribbled and said, this year the ships were still stuck in the ice. Franklin had died along with most of the officer crew, and basically 150 men were going to set out and desert the ships on foot and head for the mainland of Canada, where they thought there would be a port to the entrance of this river where they could get away. None were ever found again.
Wow. No bodies?
Well, they later on discovered some of their bodies, and they actually took it from the Inuits. The Inuits actually gave stories about some of the white men that they encountered, saying that they were starving, and that they asked them for food, but they couldn't give them all their food, so they gave them some food. And then others told them an even grimmer story that, yeah, they found what was known as like a camp of tents, and in the tents there was about 30 people, 30 bodies, and they had resulted in eating each other. And it had shocked Victoria Britain so much they actually didn't believe it. And it only took like 150 years later for them to find out what actually happened to this crew. And basically, yeah, they did resort in cannibalism. One of the things they actually took on this voyage too that was new was canned food. But what was even horrible is the canned food later on, when they looked, turned out to be giving the crew lead poisoning. So then not only were they dying of lead poisoning routine, they were also dying of scurvy too. So they all died. They all died basically. Now the reason it's called is the Terror, and this is the part where I wish wasn't true. There's actually this monster that kind of hunts them throughout the whole thing, and it's so sad because it's such a great show with such a great period to go off of, with such good props and actors in it, that it plays a small role. So don't let that discourage you. But what I didn't get either is why didn't they just put a polar bear? It's basically like a man bear pig thing, like a polar pig thing. It's like a huge animal. I don't understand why they just didn't use a polar bear.
You see it.
Yeah, you see it, but there's a series of other things that happen, but it's a great show. I recommend it to everybody who is fans of like Game of Thrones. It has almost every actor from Game of Thrones and Chernobyl in it.
Some lost elements in there?
It is there's some. It's a great show. I mean, it's so great because it's such an open mystery that leaves it to the imagination that you can go off of what really actually happened to these people. So I recommend The Terror to a lot of people. I know I'm coming late to the party on this review, but let me tell you, it is a great little mini-series.
It actually got picked up for a second season, but it's not going to follow off of what happened after that, but it's going to be called The Terror Infamy, and it's going to be set during World War II.
Oh, okay, interesting. So it's going to be about that monster thing.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it was interesting, everything but that, but I definitely recommend it. Definitely give it a high rating, definitely give it like a 7.5, almost a must-see. So, alright, we'll be right back with our main subject, the man who almost took down Disney. Back in the 1970s, there was a man that worked at Disney. After seeing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it was always his dream to go work for the Disney Animation Studios company, which he did. But as soon as he actually went and worked for them, he found out that Disney had actually lost its edge in animation and storytelling, or so he felt. So this man actually decided to lead a mass exodus from Disney and create his own company. Many of you know his films or have seen his films as a child. You probably thought they were a Disney movie, but they are actually not. And so he actually led the way in a one-on-one competition with Disney and was able to actually outdo Disney in some of its highest times. And that man was Don Bluth. And that's what this subject is going to be about tonight. The man who almost took down Disney, Don Bluth, and Don Bluth Animated Films. So Don Bluth, many of us have actually seen his films, but probably never even knew it, or probably thought they were a Disney film. So for those who have never seen a Don Bluth film, we'll get started with his first recognizable film, Banjo and the Woodpile Cat, which was a TV short. Did you guys ever see that movie?
I did.
I didn't. I never heard about that one.
Yeah, I actually have never seen it before. Steve, how is it?
It was okay. If you kind of like earlier type of Disney animation, like around Cinderella-ish, it's pretty good. Overtones of what he would later write in other movies like Thumbelina and stuff like that. They had pretty good people at the time. Scatman Carruthers actually rather enjoyed Don Bluth's company, and he was on for the film, which kind of gave it that umph that it needed. It was like a precursor. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't also that great. But I do recommend going back and seeing it if you're a fan of the Don Bluth films.
The reason I even bring this film up is because actually Don Bluth had to actually make this movie out of his garage.
Yep.
That's actually why I bring it. And it was actually one of the leading reasons for his side of the animation department to leave. In fact, the animation department was so divided at the time, they actually called half of it the Bluthies and the other half the Mouseketeers or Mousettes. That's how divided the animation studio was. Many people actually saw Don Bluth as a reincarnation of Disney, but actually some people saw him as a very arrogant man. So, he actually started with his first animated film, which was The Secret of Nymph. Hit it, Steve.
Okay, so The Secret of Nymph was a play on some of the books that were being made around that time. I don't know if you guys heard of the book Redwall or Watership Down, about a bunch of rats kind of living in their own community. So this movie,
Watership Down,
yeah. So this is sort of like a Watership Down moment where it was kind of like mutiny. There was these rats kind of wanting to take over other parts of these rat nations, and they rebelled against each other. And the wife, which her name was Mrs. Brixby, her husband was the leader of this resistance. He gets killed, and she is sort of like holding the pillar of hope for these refugee rats.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes out to seek help from this great, wise leader, I guess. And it's to pretty much, seek help for all these rats that were basically being pillaged upon. It was kind of like a play on of a lot of people would say it, but I don't really see it, like the Nazis' invasion of France and stuff like that, because of how they were just going through and just basically saying like, oh, we're helping you, kind of, but not really. They were like killing people, which this is one of the first animated films that hit the major theaters for showing death. There's actually a major scene where one of the rats actually gets killed, stabbed in the back, and there's blood. So this film was not well received due to that fact, because Disney was so well received as far as like a family-oriented company. Secret of the Nymph,
arguably.
Yeah, arguably. Secret of the Nymph was very, very blunt and brutal, and its story was very, very like oriented mainly for adults almost. Like an adult and a child can see it, and it would make sense for both of them.
Interesting. I've only seen part of The Secret of Nymph, to be honest with you. I do know, however, that Brixby was actually Frisbee, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And they had to actually change it in the audio editing department to Brisby to not be sued, which is really, really, really funny. It is a cult classic film. I know that. I've only seen part of it. I think it's interesting, but the reason it's even getting mentioned here is because Don Bluth has stated this is his favorite movie he ever did.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too.
I agree.
His favorite movie. So after The Secret of Nymph, which actually didn't make that much money, as Steve pointed out, they actually were in trouble, him and his animation department. And basically a savior came in the name of Steven Spielberg, who actually had seen The Secret of Nymph and was very impressed. So he actually wanted to work with Don Bluth on what would be one of the biggest animated films of all time, which is An American Tail. I love this film.
Right?
This one I have seen. I absolutely love American Tail. I think it is one of the greatest stories ever told. One of the most underrated stories. So for those who have never seen it, American Tail is basically the story of American immigrants, but told from a mouse perspective, basically. It's the story of Fievel, who comes with his parents, who ends up getting lost and separated, and he gets to actually experience kind of the back-endedness of American New York society at the time.
Another immigrant, like mouse, they're Russian mouse.
Yeah, he's a Russian mouse. Yeah. I mean, what can be said? It won a lot of awards, actually.
It did. It won a Grammy for the song "Somewhere" Out There. What's kind of funny is Don Bluth did not like the name Feifel.
Yeah.
And it was actually Spielberg's grandfather whose name was Feifel. So Feifel has become a name that has just gone down in history. I mean, one of the most
it became Steven Spielberg. Feifel became Steven Spielberg's for his animation company. Its logo. Yeah, the logo. Yeah, so American Tail was good. And you know what was even funnier is Don Bluth actually beat out Disney here. He beat out Disney because Disney at the time came out same year, The Great Mouse Detective,
which a juggernaut of a film at the time.
I love The Great Mouse Detective too, and you know it's really interesting because when I was a child too, I always thought it was funny how I kept saying why does Disney do so many mouse movies? But you know that was me as a child not realizing that these are two competing different animation companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like a big Easter egg thing kind of about these rats and mouses between Don Bluth and the Walt Disney animated film studios. Was around this time movies such as The Rescuers on Disney side and Don Bluth's Secret of the Nymph. Secret of the Nymph, obviously, you know, the main protagonists in the stories were rats. And in The Great Mouse Detective and The Rescuers, they were mouses. Especially in The Great Mouse Detective, the main villain was a rat. So they were competing. Those movies were heavily competing with each other. And it was rumored that Walt Disney specifically wanted a rat to be a main villain, which, by the way, if you haven't seen the movie, he hates being called a rat. That's like the main thing he hates. He wants to be a mouse. He wants to be a mouse. So when they go like, oh, he's the most famous rat, he goes, what did you call me?
Oh, wow.
Because they were basically kind of taking a subtle shot at Don Bluth, like,
really?
Hey, yeah. So that's pretty a big Easter egg there was they were kind of taking a subtle jab at Don Bluth with the whole rat thing, saying if you're going to make a movie about a rat protagonist, then we're just going to take a jab with our main villain wanting to be a mouse instead of a rat.
Yeah, American Tail though it's definitely one of the great movies, great animated film, must see animated film. You know, then Don Bluth went on to do his next animated classic, which he actually had to get done in quite a hurry. They actually wanted it to be done the next year from American Tail, but this movie would actually be one of the biggest movies in animated history. Not to mention Don Bluth's career, but it would just rock all of the just movies in general. Would be The Land Before Time, 1988. You know, the story of Littlefoot and his friends trying to get to the Great Valley after he loses his mother from the Sharptooth or the Tyrannosaurus Rex, you know, he being a brontosaurus the prey. But man, Land Before Time was, man, that's my childhood. I gotta tell you guys. Such a great movie. I mean, it's a sad film. I'll just say it's a sad film. I mean, overall, it's a sad film. And in fact, it was actually too depressing at one point in time. They actually had to add a part to The Land Before Time, that part where Littlefoot runs into the Stegosaurus kind of dude, and he tells them, like, it was Rooter, yeah, it was Rooter, there it was.
Yes.
Where it was the scene with Rooter where he tells them, you know, about how you're always going to miss your mother and they'll always be with you in your heart. I mean, that was actually added to help the story along, and, you know, boy, was it a really needed scene, because Land Before Time is, I mean,
extremely dark.
Yes, going back, and you know, there was a lot of things that was added to it. They actually had to cut out quite a bit because it was too violent, especially a lot of the scenes with the Sharptooth, which is why, if you notice in some of the animation too, there's actually a point where Littlefoot actually found the Great Valley and then went back to find his friends. And you can notice that in some of the subtle animations because they had to actually cut it. I know it sounds really hard, but if you go back and watch the movies, there's parts where he knows generally where to go already to find the Great Valley because he had already found it. It was actually a plot hole in the movie. And also the rock is still up there, the one they pushed on the Sharptooth. It's still up there when he finds it, you know, originally when his mom's, like, cloud leads him to it. It's up there. So he actually had already found it, then he had to come back. And then he saved him. So that scene was actually kind of had to be manipulated and added in, yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
So,
what it is what it is.
Yeah.
Another film that had very, very adult type of situations that are being shown to kids. Obviously, these children, dinosaurs coming from different ethnic backgrounds,
Oh,
different
wow, yeah.
species.
Yeah.
That's a good
That
point.
their parents hated each other. Don't hang out with Littlefoot. We don't hang out with.
Don't hang out with a long neck,
Yeah, don't hang out with long neck and
a three horn.
but they're children and they don't see things as quote unquote black and white.
That is a great
and
point.
they led each other to the quote unquote promised land together.
That is a great point. Wow.
Well, I mean, Don Bluth's movies have been infamous with dark kind of tones to it, and I mean, how you're saying like how he lost his mom, that was like one of the first dark turns and kind of mortality that he shows yet again in his movies.
Yeah.
Disney had never done that before either, before Fox and the Hound.
Yeah. Disney was always very reluctant to take those subtle dark tones of death and stuff like that, which, kind of carried on to his next film. And before we get to that, we're actually going to take another break, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, and we're back talking about Don Bluth movies. And as I was saying, the subject of death actually kind of led Don Bluth down the path to make his next animated film, which is called All Dogs Go to Heaven, 1989. I mean, first of all, let me just say, too, this was not the home run that Don Bluth got with American Tail and Land Before Time. He actually got stomped out with this one at the box office, and that's because he went up against The Little Mermaid.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah, let's just say that didn't go very well for him. But All Dogs Go to Heaven is actually considered a success when it went to home video. It's actually quite a cult following movie. I've seen it myself. It's about Charlie, the dog, who's basically a con artist who runs a casino with another partner, Carface, and his partner, Itchy. And they basically come across a girl, Anna Marie, basically, played by, the sad Judy Barcy. But, they actually kind of con her into talking to animals that they know so they can place bets and make a ton of money. While, on the other hand, Charlie is actually escaping death because he's been actually murdered by his former partner a couple times and has already gone to heaven and found a way to come back, which he can't go back again. So he's either, he's destined to go to hell at this point, so does what he wants with the time left he has on Earth. Personally, like All Dogs Go to Heaven, I think there's some good things about it, some bad things. I enjoy the scummy guy being the lead character in an animated film. I mean, it was very hard to warm up to that kind of character at first, don't get me wrong, because Charlie's supposed to be the guy you care about, but he's a terrible, terrible person.
Evil wins against
terrible
evil.
bad dog.
Yeah.
The songs in the movie aren't bad, too, even though they seem very, very just kind of, shoved in there. I mean, but, like, Let's Make Music Together. Love that song. I think that song's awesome. You Can't Keep a Good Dog Down is a good song, too. The songs I'd actually give a high rating to, but for the most part, All Dogs Go to Heaven is, I just think, a really dark film, even darker than Land Before Time. You actually see these religious sceneries of heaven and hell and notations of death and God and the devil. I mean, it is straight up, I think, a dark film. In fact, even when I was younger and I seen this film, I was kind of put off by it because of how much graphic scenery it showed me. That's me personally, I was a little afraid of this film because it disturbed me a little bit as a kid.
It's pretty hardcore for a kid. Another overtone for death and what happens after you die. This is, again, so we've seen in Don Bluth's films so far, he has explored and not afraid to explore the limits of death and what happens when you die and how to deal with death, especially in Land Before Time. And now we're in basically what happens after you die. What happens? People wants to know. Like, it's hard to explain that to a child, so this is what happens. And obviously he's telling it in a dog form. But yeah, you're right. You're seeing the dog go to heaven. You see what heaven kind of looks like.
The dog go to hell.
Exactly. The dogs that go to hell, and see what happens there. So to kind of scare a child into doing the moral right thing, because the characters that you're supposed to like are not good people. You know what I mean? Burt Reynolds' character, Charles, not a good. They're not good, dogs. You know what I mean? So
Let the hate flow through.
yeah, they're not good dogs. They don't do good things, and you know what I mean. So if you live your life wrong, you won't go to heaven. So that was a big overtone again for the time of 1989. That was huge.
Yeah. All right, and we're gonna actually move into his next animated classic. Just kidding. This one actually would fall flat on its face, and that's Rockadoodle, 1991. I like Rockadoodle, but it has some huge plot holes in it. It was actually inspired off of Roger Rabbit at the time. Don Bluth wanted to do the live action with animation. It's the story of Chanticleer, who lives out on the farm, and basically his crowing brings up the sun. And basically one day the owls, who hate Chanticleer, they send an evil guy down there, and he basically challenges Chanticleer to a fight. They duke it out, and all of a sudden people see that the sun rises without Chanticleer. The sun's coming up at him! And then guess what? They basically go, well, I guess he's a big phony. He's a fake. And they basically boo him off the farm. Then there comes the rain with Edmund, and basically his family is going through the same thing on the farm. The rains are there, taking out everything, and basically everything starts to go completely to shit. And he decides to call Chanticleer! Chanticleer! Then the Grand Duke of Owls hears it, and he's like, you ain't bringing back that rooster. And he turns Edmund into a kitty. Long story short, his friends find Edmund and them go to the city. Chanticleer is now not crowing for no farm. He's actually singing like the chosen one, and I mean Elvis status on the big stage. It's actually all a grand scheme. The Grand Duke of Owls has his hand in the whole thing, and basically it's a big caper. Chanticleer comes back to the farm and takes down everybody. But it did terrible, guys. I mean, this movie did absolutely awful. They tried so hard, in this film especially, to market to get that Oscar, to get that critic review. They really try to play it towards a lot of things, but it's just a kind of a shallow kind of film. I mean, I know I just described to you the shallow plot, but what's interesting about the movie, too, in Rockadoodle, is these songs are actually pretty good.
They're excellent.
They're
but they are not allowed to play out in the movie because they are cut off by narration by Patu, the dog character in the movie, and it just basically makes it go nowhere. It makes the movie almost less fun. He even narrates and explains things that are being explained right there to you right then and there.
Chanticleer played by Glenn Campbell too, by the way, so the man could sing. And yeah, you're right. They just I don't understand why they would do that. You had these like classic songs, I would dare to say, but they're cut off and you don't even hear it because they're forcing in this narrative with the kitty pretty much trying to get Chanticleer's attention. Yeah. And they do this other stuff that again is funny, by the way. The movie is funny.
It is funny.
They have classic characters, but you're totally right. I think that they didn't give a lot of the overtones that they needed to.
They didn't flush the story out enough.
Story.
I mean, even Chanticleer is an awesome like idea for a character, but he's not even in most of the films. Yeah. And it's named after him. It's about him. What's interesting too, though, is he actually had the idea for this character a long time ago, like way back in the 30s when they were doing Disney's Robin Hood. And actually, Chanticleer is kind of in Robin Hood. He's the rooster playing the
rooster in the beginning.
Yeah, playing the roof there. So, he actually had that idea, but it was kind of Rockadoodle was kind of a modern, more idea of it though. Then, completely more, I guess you would say, based off of rather than a remake of the idea they were going for. But yeah, Rockadoodle just basically bombed, and I believe it went up against Beauty and the Beast, if I'm correct.
It came out in 1991. And Beauty and the Beast just basically, it wasn't even a contest. And I feel like just because of one of Disney's most classic films ever, it didn't do well. Even with Rockadoodle's unfleshed out story, that movie is a well-deserved cult classic. That's a movie that is a cult classic.
You know what's even sadder, too, is even Ferngully came out around like a month before, I believe it was, and it didn't even beat out that. So
but that's kind of hard because Ferngully is just.
Well, say what you want about Ferngully. Ferngully is a give or take kind of movie. You either love it or hate it. Some people think it's great. Some people think it's crap. But I mean, Rock-a-Doodle didn't even make a splash compared to that film either.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where it just came up against too many good movies at once. Maybe if they had waited till the next year or the year after, it would have done as well. Just poor thing, because it wasn't the cast, it wasn't the performances. You're right on that. The story was not flushed. I think they rushed it too. Obviously, they were trying to do that whole thing with Chanticleer having the overdose of Elvis and getting the career, losing himself because he was booed off the farm. The Grand Duke almost taking over the farm in his absence.
Now, he is actually a very interesting character. I actually really do like the Grand Duke. I think he is a very, very interesting character and probably the best part about Rock-a-Doodle. I mean, I actually like his songs. I like, the whole We Hate the Sun. I like that song. I think he's actually awesome.
No batteries.
Yeah, no batteries.
Yeah.
That's what we were talking about. There are some interesting songs that take place in the movie, but for the most part they're pointless. But let's go ahead and move on to Don Bluth's next film that he did. I mean, Thumbelina, guys. I mean, who doesn't like Thumbelina? That's, not your sister.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people that actually like this film. 1994. I think it's okay.
It's an okay movie.
I think it's okay.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is I know one of the songs in it has a Razzie, and it's the only animated musical song ever done with a Razzie. That's to win a Razzie. I know that. Thumbelina's okay. I mean, the story of a woman that's small and finds the fairy prince and is gonna marry him, and then everyone else just kind of takes notice of her and kidnaps her and wants to marry her, and she has to get back to him. And
yeah, I mean that's basically hitting it on the nail.
That's kind of the film.
But the one big problem about this film, when you think about a small woman that is definitely competing with Disney, who do you think of?
I'll think of Disney.
No, in Disney.
Oh,
what
in
character
Disney?
do you specifically think of when you think of a small woman?
Tinkerbell.
Yeah. I think that was the big problem there, was even though Peter Pan came out in 1953, Thumbelina, that's a, people are like, we've already seen this, we don't need to see.
So?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think this is a good enough film to propel it.
I just think it wasn't that good enough film.
It just was okay.
And I think the music was very mediocre.
Oh, yeah.
And this was during Don Bluth's really dark period, actually. This is when their studio was going bankrupt quite a bit. They were actually just saved by another company here when they made these two films, and their next one was probably one of the worst animated films of all time, probably one of the worst movies of all time, A Troll in Central Park. For those people who don't know what Troll in Central Park is, it's the story of Stanley, and he lives in this evil troll kingdom, and basically the troll kingdom, they don't like happy things, and he likes happy things, so basically they're going to send, the evil queen wants to send him to a place where things never grow. Central Park. Yeah. There's a boy and a girl. They're the two main characters in the film, and basically it was a big caper of a thumb war fight between this dude and this queen, and I don't even really care to give it too much more thought than that. I mean, it's a Troll in Central Park. Have you guys seen it?
I've seen it.
I have not.
I like the movie.
You like that movie?
I like the movie.
Wow, really?
You might be one of the only ones.
I think you are one of the only ones that like this film.
I probably am.
Have you seen the rating this movie gets?
I do. It has a 17% on Rotten Tomato, a 5.4 on IMDb.
Dude, do you like the film?
I do love the film.
Even Don Bluth has said he does not like this film. I mean, he's even stated that this film wasn't even done correctly, and it wasn't. It was just terribly done.
Yeah.
But man, you're one of the only people I know that has ever said that. Wow.
Yeah, not even Don DeLuise again. His right-hand man just could not do it as the leading. It was about the leading pig, correct? I've never seen the film in my life. I've seen trailers of it when I'm watching, Secret of the Nymph or something, or Troll.
You got paid troll toll.
Yeah.
Well, even the songs in there are pretty good. That's probably another reason why people.
I've never heard of really too many of any of them.
Well, I mean, the whole reason why I liked it so much is because he's a stranger in a foreign land and he doesn't know what to do. So what does he start to do? He starts making the garden grow. He starts bringing life to the Central Park, kind of brightening it up for everybody to see the humanity. Basically, that's what I got from it when I watched it as a kid.
You were probably one of the only people I've ever known to think that in depth about that movie.
Blah, blah, blah.
I
You
probably
gotta
am.
believe me.
And you know what? It doesn't bother me. I'll say
Like, I'm
forever.
proud of it.
I love this movie. I mean, come on now.
Oh my god, I am.
It's not. I mean, you can either go ahead and watch that, or yeah. Disney said the same thing. Hold the phone. You're gonna make that trash. Well, in that 1994,
come
let's
on.
go ahead and make The
We
Lion
can't-
King in the same year and just squash him.
Right, I mean, it was like,
Isn't that cute? But it's wrong!
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So let's go ahead and move on to what his next animated feature would be, which is actually, this one has a huge cult following, more than a Troll in Central Park, which is just Billy. It's its only fan, so, which would be The Pebble and the Penguin. I mean, who wants to take it away on this one?
This one's a pretty underrated classic
1995.
film. 1995, right in the middle, and guess who comes on to the film to try to really boast that star power? You got Martin Short as Hubie, which I loved, and you had the one and only, I should say.
Yes, one and only.
Tim Curry. Tim Curry as Drake. It's about a story about a pretty just weird penguin kind of being awkward away from all the other penguins, not really doing what he's told, and he falls in love with Mariana, I believe, the female penguin, and he has his eyes on her, but the bigger, badder
bully.
the bully kind of the movie, Drake, who was played by Tim Curry, is kind of like, no, this is my girl. So he goes out and be like, well, how can I impress her? I need to do this one thing to impress her.
Gotta find that pebble.
And he thinks of this pebble. And
Gotta
he goes
find that
out with Rocco, played by James Belushi, and goes out to find... he goes with Rocco to find this pebble. And it's a pretty, and hilarities ensue, obviously. So it's great when you have, Martin Short and James Belushi just kind of riffing off each other in the film. It's pretty good.
Yeah, he definitely wants that bird of his dreams.
Yeah. It's a pretty good movie. I don't know how you guys felt about it. I loved it.
Pebble and the Penguin?
Not a good,
okay. I mean,
pretty hard.
It's not my, I mean, it's alright. I personally, I don't know. Maybe I was a little past that when I was older. I don't know. I think it's okay. I just think it's okay. I know a lot of people that like it.
It's all right.
Yeah, and this is probably where I think Don Bluth was performing basically at his worst. Because some people are going to disagree with me on the next one, because the next one was 1997's Anastasia. Excellent film. It was actually the highest grossing movie Don Bluth ever did. Actually, one of the only sequels, too, he ever did, with a really cheesy direct-to-video sequel. The animation for this movie is excellent. I mean...
It's his best.
It's his best. 9 out of 10. I mean, the story, too, is about, the last surviving child of the Russian royal family, the Tsars, and basically these two con men are trying to fool everyone into thinking that this is the last surviving daughter, and meanwhile Rasputin, the evil guy who
name.
Yeah, well, he was a real guy in history, basically comes back from the dead to seek his revenge, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a weird movie. I know a lot of people like this movie, but it's so weird because it's like
funny.
I know, but it's like when I first seen this, I was like, okay, so it's a movie about the last surviving child of a royal family that was murdered in the Soviet Union.
Yes, exactly.
Like, that's awful. That just seems like an awful setting already.
Yeah. She's kind of not likable.
And then, of course, she didn't. They found her, like 5 feet away. They just didn't think to look there, unfortunately.
But to his dark kind of subtitles and kind of humor.
I get it, but this is like so off the cuff.
I give a lot of Anastasia a lot of crap because this was I put it in the category with Thumbelina, which is like you had to watch it if you had a sister kind of thing. it's just not memorable to me as far as the story.
It is though. That's the thing though. It's a great film. I mean, it gets up there. It was the highest grossing Don Bluth film he ever did.
140 million.
Yeah, it's the number one. I mean, people.
The animation though, I think maybe might be.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. They really hate this movie in Russia. I just know the Russian people hate this movie. They think it's ridiculous. They think it's one of the most stupidest movies ever.
Soviet Union thing, maybe
comprised. No, really, because it's about the Russian royal family. I mean, that's not too held high in their history. I mean, they basically murdered them.
Yeah.
They did.
But some little things to go with this. This was the first movie that Bluth worked with Fox Animation as well. I mean, and this kind of helped propel 20th Century Fox to be a big competitor against Disney.
I wouldn't say I would say a competitor.
Maybe then.
Yeah, maybe then. They just gave him the funding to do a bunch of the cauldron scenes when the guy's like, doing his necromancy type thing. His arms are off and his head's off. The part when she's singing "Once Upon a December" and like spins around the room. They have a bunch of like pseudo 3D type thing going on there. Mm-hmm. I think that I stick to my gun saying that's the thing that kind of people liked, because there wasn't a lot of animation that did that at the time. Disney wasn't even close at around that time. Maybe Toy Story, but that's a far end stretch.
Yeah.
I don't know. The only thing I get out of this movie is just "Once Upon a December," and I just think that's just a decent song.
This was another movie that I liked from Don Bluth. I mean, it was heavily cast too. I mean, we got Meg Rand. Come on! I mean, Bartok, played by Hank Azaria, and a geeker, sir. I mean, come on now. That is one of my
if you think
lines.
that is cute, ladies, then that Squid is definitely in your ballpark.
Well, we got Angela Lansbury playing the Queen, John Cusack, Christopher Lloyd as Rasputin.
Yeah.
Kelsey Grammer is in this. I mean, Kristen Dunst
give you a Rasputin.
I mean, and Bernadette Peters too. I mean, my God, this was a great cast for this movie.
It is. Like I said, Anastasia it's good. I mean, I personally give it the kudos it deserves. Unlike some here.
All right.
I'll give it what it deserves, because I recognize how great of a film it is. But that would actually move him into the millennium, in which he actually made a movie that he thought would take the millennium by storm, which we all know ended being on its ass, which is we'll be right back from a word from our sponsors. All right. So we're back, guys. So Don Bluth, as the millennium turned, he decided to grace us with a movie that, a lot of people may say at the reception it was okay, I guess, which was 2000's Titan AE, which is about a young man who basically finds out he has a hidden message in his hand that, is basically the key to finding humanity's new Earth. And basically, there's these aliens that are pure energy. They go chasing after him along with his crew, Big Caper. Spoiler, saves humanity.
No.
That is Titan A in a nutshell. If anyone thinks I'm wrong, then whatever, because that was basically the film. However, though, I actually enjoy it. I think it's okay. I mean, it's not a movie I look to watch. It's not like, I don't sit there and I go, oh, it's Christmas, I'm going to watch Gremlins. It's not like that, because that's how I am, but it's not like that. I actually sit there and I go, Titan AE, it's on TV. There's sports and Titan, I'll watch Titan AE. So, I'll watch it when it's on. I think it's okay. It was a very expensive movie.
It was
very, very expensive to make. It's a lot of some CGI in it too, some computer animation with real time animation, and with hand drawn animation too. I mean, there's a lot in it. Mm-hmm. I mean, some of the characters were literally basically green screened in on some of them, rotoscoped. I mean, it has basically every kind of concept of animation you've ever seen wrapped into this movie, and yet it's such a
dry film.
A dry film. Yeah, that's a very good way to put it.
Very trite.
It's very dry, very flat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just kind of goes nowhere, really. I mean, I get it. I mean, the whole time I ever watched this movie, I'm like, oh, so he has a key in his hand that his father gave him. Okay, I get it. Oh, these aliens that destroyed Earth before, they don't want humanity coming back. Okay, I get it.
Well, like,
It's like, oh, his main partner betrays him.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because he fears the other. I get it. It's like, and then the end of the film happens along with there goes the plot. And it's like, okay.
I mean, well, you definitely see like a lot of plot holes in it. Even the portrayal from the one of the last few remaining humans out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see a mile away. I mean, it's so dry. I mean,
It had a lot of potential because I actually enjoyed the build-up, the whole. I like the movie that's about finding the crew, finding the who's going to be right for the job. But Tiny just kind of took it and then went wow and just took it nowhere. I mean, basically all the characters you were supposed to care about basically ended up betraying him in the end, and you're like, okay, okay. And then he makes the new Earth, and at that point I would have been like, yeah, I'm king of this place.
Yeah, I think it's just an unfinished story. The world that they had for them was very small.
It was a huge universe,
right? I mean,
it was a big yet small universe.
Yeah, big yet small. Like they didn't tell it enough, and obviously it's an hour and a couple of minutes, hour and 16 minute long film. You can't get it. You can't get it done in that time. You know what I mean? And even though, again, another film that he has a star-studded A-list cast team starring, just can't get it to go. And we're seeing that pattern with Don Bluth's films, starting from All Dogs Go to Heaven and afterwards.
Yeah.
There's a lot of star power. Like I said, Don DeLuise basically on every single major film. You had Burt Reynolds, you had Matt Damon in this film. You had a bunch of people in these films that just couldn't get it done. And I think that just goes to show that Don Bluth is a absolute legend. He took the animation world by storm. Do you guys agree with that? As far as
he had a definite rise, climax, and fall.
Definitely,
I'll say that.
Yes.
His impact on animation, though, is going to be felt forever. I mean,
he rocked Disney.
He rocked Disney. I mean, he gave Disney the 1-2 KO punch. I mean, he rocked them. He made them sit flat on their ass for a second and made them rethink how we're going to do animation. He brought them out of the Disney Renaissance. If Don Bluth wasn't gone, Disney probably would be very different to this day, because like we were saying earlier in our segment, it's the competition that brings out the best in people, brings out the best in a company. And with Disney, they seen their backs against the wall, and they were like, okay, we got to get to work here. We got to show people what Disney magic is all about.
Right. And then, afterwards, obviously in the 90s and into the 2000s, Disney started to really pick up steam with their heavy overtones of betrayal and death and romance. Hunchback of Notre Dame, Pocahontas, and I credit that to Don Bluth, who basically set that tone, because beforehand you had Aladdin, you had stuff like that, Cinderella, you had Snow White. You didn't get the I would say the Lion King maybe is the first one where you saw the death and then the coming of the age and stuff like that. But I would
didn't get those adult narratives along with it. You know what I mean?
You wouldn't have.
And now we have movies like Coco that are not afraid to blur that line to showing a child what death is about. You know what I mean?
That's a Don Bluth film to me. It's in an overtone. You wouldn't have I would say a Lion King without A Land Before Time. You wouldn't have a Great Mouse Detective without Secret of the Nymph. And you wouldn't have a Hunchback without, take your pick, whether it be, Rock-a-Doodle, whether it be All Dogs Go to Heaven. I think his films had direct influence on the creativity and propelled Disney.
Yeah.
As far as anybody wants to say, the man that almost took down Disney almost basically helped Disney through their most prolific time, where the children's
made Disney what it is today.
Made him what it is today, I would say.
But nobody be discouraged, because Don Bluth has not stopped. In fact, something we did not get into that is very relevant to Don Bluth's career is his video games. Don Bluth has animated a lot of video games, including the famous game Dragon's Lair. Now, he is actually helping produce the Dragon Lair movie that is set to be in 2020. Whether it be a hit or not, who who knows? We'll see what time can tell. But beyond that, though, this has been your friendly neighborhood Real Sharks. I am your host, Rob, with Steve.
Thank you.
With Billy.
Yes.
Coming to you guys live from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
That's so
We'll catch you on the flip side.
What do you call that voice, little fella? That a baritone or a tenor? Oh, I don't care. It's just you and me. Let's make music together. Let's make sweet harmony. Oh, let's make music together, baby. You take the dough, I'll take the ray. You better hang on to